I've been podcasting since 2006. In that time, I've tried countless hosting platforms, but in August 2022, we switched to Transistor to power all of our shows here at True Story FM, and it's been a game changer.
I love the Transistor allows unlimited podcasts and storage without extra charges. We can publish so much content, and we do. If you want to start up a podcast, do yourself a favor and host your show on Transistor.
With their one-click publishing, you can get your new show onto all the major podcast directories effortlessly.
And their website builder lets you quickly build custom sites for each show.
The detailed analytics are invaluable too. You can access all kinds of listener data anytime.
Oh, and the versatile players allow you to embed episodes anywhere to reach new listeners. Plus, the team behind Transistor is super responsive and keeps making the platform even better.
After using countless hosting services over 15 plus years, Transistor has been, hands down, the best podcast partner for us.
If you want a hosting platform to take all the worry out of getting your podcast out into the world, go to thenextreel.com/transistor and check it out.
Support our show and support your own show by going to thenextreel.com/transistor. Start growing your podcast today. Andy, according to my friend Internet, this is what Letterboxd is. Letterboxd is a global social network for grassroots film discussion and discovery. Use it as a diary to record and share your opinion about films as you watch them, or just keep track of films you've seen in the past. Showcase your favorites on your profile page.
That is a lot.
You bet it is. That's why I want you to tell our fair listeners just one thing you do with Letterboxd that has changed the way you watch movies. Let them have it.
Okay, are you ready for this?
So ready.
I love lists. As of today, I have 246 lists in my account. I use them to track the movies I watch, organize them in all sorts of different ways. I track them by hand. I clone lists from other people. I use them to plan what I'm going to be watching, all sorts of things. I love creating lists. It's a fantastic tool.
Sexiest animated characters. Andy, what is this?
We love Letterboxd, and if you're a movie lover, we are sure you will too. And when you upgrade from the free account, you will remove ads and support the great Kiwi team building this amazing service.
Just use the discount code NEXTREEL or visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd to get 20% off your pro or patron membership. And it works for renewals as well.
Welcome to Movies We Like, part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
It is. It's Pete Wright for reals.
On today's episode, we have invited filmmaker Nathan Blackwell to talk about Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz, a movie he likes. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And I don't just like it, I love it.
He loves it. Well, the show's not called Movies We Love, so
right. Okay,
but
I really like.
It's a strong
one. We like a lot. Like seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we are thrilled to have you on the show for a number of reasons. One, you're part of the True Story podcast network. You and Chrissy chat about 80s movies over on Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast. It must be fun for you to not have to talk about an 80s movie for a change.
It is. Yeah. I feel like I'm cheating, but it feels great. Oh, no. What does it say about me?
Right. Oh, so funny. But also, you are a filmmaker, and your first feature film, the last movie ever made, is available now on streaming. It's played the festival circuits, and now it's streaming, and it's a fantastically fun film. And we want to talk to you a little bit about that before we chat about Hot Fuzz. So let's dig in. Filmmaking, let's start with kind of just you and filmmaking. How did it start for you? What was the draw?
So the reason why Chrissy and I do an 80s movies podcast is because that's when we grew up, you know? And so I was really formed by Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Star Wars films. Like, I was the perfect age. That was like Atari and VHS all being invented, and then you can now consume that media over and over again at will, you know? And so those movies made me fall in love with movies. And so, of course, our first kind of films, our short films, like on Super 8, were like Indiana Jones and Star Wars ripoffs, you know? And then eventually we graduated to like ripping off other more abstract things like Naked Gun and, and Star Trek and stuff like that. But yeah, I just always wanted to make movies, but well, let me put it another way. I always made movies with my friends, but I never like literally put two and two together. It's like, well, maybe I should do this. Like the thought literally didn't seem realistic to me. And I remember, because again, like it was like, what project are we working on? Let's talk on the weekends, things like that. But I just, so my friend, when I was, I think 16, said, what if we just try to do movies like for like a living or something? What if we go to
for like a living or something?
Yeah. And so in Phoenix, South Mountain High School had a magnet program. So they had a high school video production program. And so South was really great. It was almost kind of like one of these things like a TV show to where they had so many different magnet programs. I'm blanking on the show, so you had all these really overlapping, crazy groups of students. They had a drama program, a music program. They had an aerospace and law program.
Wow! Holy
and
cow.
So video production, dance, and so you'd see the dancers all secretly smoking in the back, and then the actors all hanging out with them. But the musicians, they were more like band musicians. They were too stuffy to hang out with them. And there would be one or two video production people, but we were still kind of square too. And there were even like print, like journalism print people. But so it was like an awakening for me. It was just like I had, for my first 2 years of high school, terrible grades, because I just wasn't interested in any of those things. And then my second 2 years, that was when I transferred to South. It was just kind of like it lit me up.
Yeah.
My friend never took a film class. The one who said, let's try to do this for real. He never took step two.
Was he into law classes?
Yeah. He became a lawyer, but he was also a trained musician. And now he's starting writing novels.
Wow. Okay.
And so that was really the thing. And so the last movie ever made is actually my third feature film, but it's the first one to get distributed.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the first one, so I was kind of like, I had this energy, this trajectory. So at this point, this is the 90s. And so this is when Miramax and Tarantino and El Mariachi and Kevin Smith, and it was like the resurgence of indie film. Like, let's go get it. Let's do it. If you build it, it will come. Like, all you have to do is make a movie, and then you'll get into Sundance, and then your next movie, then you'll get to make a $2 million movie, and then you'll make a 50, it was the dream. They were at that point selling the dream. And so I totally was into it.
It was easy to buy into with all those stories too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's all you saw. And it was one success story after another. And so we made a $50,000 feature film on film, and we didn't get distribution.
Wow.
It's because first of all, I was a 22-year-old kid, and it wasn't my money. It was my producers. Like, my producer had found the money, but it was like he had cobbled together family and friends. So it was 2,000 here, 1,000 here.
Yeah, sure.
And that created our budget.
Kind of typical indie, first budget sorts of
Absolutely.
financiers. Yeah.
And we had no idea of what to do with the movie once it was done. Like, no idea. Like, it was so opaque. There was no like understanding of how you hustle and even get how, like, the process of navigating film festivals.
I mean, having come from those same kind of background, you send a film off to a film festival and you get a rejection. You're like, well, I guess that's it.
I guess I'm done.
Like, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
there wasn't anything teaching you like, well, this is how you do that sort of thing.
Absolutely. This is pre-internet. So you had to go through like magazines and books. So there was kind of like, I was crestfallen. I didn't know what to do. Again, at that young of an age, I didn't have a good mind for business and things like that, And so there was kind of a what I call the dark period, to where I wasn't shooting things again. I was writing things, but I really wasn't like making things and putting them out into the world. I had lost a lot of confidence in myself. So then it was kind of 2005. that I started to want to make things again. So I'd say it was maybe about 5 years or so that I thought of myself as a filmmaker, but I really wasn't making things.
I just want to name check these properties. You're talking about Forever Midnight, right?
Yes.
That's your first film, 1999. Do you think the problem with that film was that the title was too close to the Geraint Wyn Davies titled Forever Night about vampires?
No,
Do you think that's close?
It was actually, as we were in production, Ben Stiller came out with Permanent Midnight.
Oh,
and I felt like that was
that's right.
a bigger blow to us. No, the problem, so there was, I think the biggest problem, other than us being total crap businessmen, was...
Okay, so we'll take that as table stakes.
Yes. So that was, let's say, okay, that's 50%.
Okay.
But I'd say the other 50% was that I was a 22-year-old who had just not, like, the movie itself is not entertaining enough to warrant like 100 minutes long. You know, it's kind of like a American Graffiti, My So-Called Life, very slice of life. Like if I had made it over again, life experience, but just filmmaking experience of how to tell a more engaging story, that would have been the thing. And honestly, it was a little out of my wheelhouse. Like I make comedies. I make like genre comedies. And it's like, oh, now I have to be a serious filmmaker. I got to make a serious movie.
And that's the first feature that you work on, that you direct.
Yes.
Is the thing that
absolutely.
is furthest from your wheelhouse. Great.
And so it was like, I've got to be a serious filmmaker. I've got to make a serious film.
Well, and I will say Forever Midnight, it does sound like the film you're describing, and the film that you wanted to make sounds like the constant epiphanies of Billy the Blood Donor. It sounds like you found your way again.
That was an overcorrection. Yeah. So in 2005, my brother Logan, who acts in a lot of our stuff, he wrote a play called The Constant Epiphanies of Billy the Blood Donor, and it was kind of a big hit. It never actually got like a full production. But we did stage readings and things like that. People really liked it. And so me just wanting to make something fun said, let's make it. It's not too complicated. It happens in a number of different locations. Like he was a bad playwright. He wrote plays like movies. It's like, oh, okay, we've got 20 locations and 20 characters. But it was fun and silly.
Why does this play keep being written as cut to and fade in?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it lended itself to kind of more of an abstract, like black box production rather than like actual sets. So the problem with Billy the Blood Donor was that we just wanted to film something and to do something fun. And so the experience of itself was absolutely worth it. But we ultimately just made a $4,000 feature film, and it looks like a $6,000 feature film, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's definitely fun and enjoyable, and it has a lot more of my style into it. But we shot it on a DVX 100 and it looks like it. And so low production value. It didn't lend itself to a lot of film festivals or getting like another traditional distribution. Like it looked like a backyard film.
Yeah.
Because it was. So that's kind of why the last movie ever made in a lot of ways feels like my first feature, not just because it's the first one to get distribution, but it was the first one going into it. It's like, I kind of knew what I was doing. I saw the end experience of it. It's like, okay, we're going to make it. I now know how to kind of make a feature film. You know, you always feel like you never know, but I felt like I had a better grasp on the process, and also then what happens afterwards. It's like how to do the film festivals, where we wanted it to end up. Between those, like after Billy the Blood Donor, we did web series, we did short films, and I feel like that's really where I developed my voice. You know, not to sound too pretentious, but like, what are the things I'm into, and what are the stories I like to tell? And so, the last movie I ever made really kind of felt like the first representative of that.
Was it an idea that you already had, or what was the process of kind of nailing that idea? Because it certainly, I mean, the concept of people finding out that essentially the world's going to end, and going back and saying, you know what, before it ends, we're going to finish that movie that we started in high school that we never finished. The conceit of it already allows for a low budget kind of sensibility, which I think is smart when you don't have a huge budget. You can actually use that to your advantage. But like, were you thinking about things like that? Like, when did the whole idea and the process kind of start coming into your head?
I had a bunch of different like lead ups, failed like screenplays that I thought were low budget, but were actually not low budget, that I tried to get off the ground. It's like, well, we did this in our 10-minute short film. We could do this 10 times over. So like a zombie comedy, like a feature adaptation of our web series Voyage Trekkers, and then another script that just got out of hand budget wise. And so it was kind of like one of those, when I realized the current script that I'd been working on and workshopping and even like doing some low key like auditioning for, like reaching out to actors saying, would you be, and these are local actors, not name actors, would you be into this? And just kind of, and then even having like art department meetings for it, realizing just the scope was way out of bounds, and kind of having that moment of lying in bed saying, I've got to come up with something new because these other projects, they're just not going to work. We don't have that kind of money. What can we do on pretty much no money? It was ultimately two ideas that I'd been toying around with, always searching for something fun and magical. Like I like those kind of like what I call like a comedy version of Black Mirror, to where there's just a little tweak in reality and you can kind of have something fun, but it kind of skirts around the idea of that you don't have a lot of money. And
Yeah.
so it's like, how do I do a comedy version of that reality is a simulation, but yet do that in a way that's satisfying, that exploits the idea, but doesn't require a lot of money.
Yeah, right.
And then the other idea was probably fueled by my own like feelings of getting older and regret and just being an artist, of like, what if you had this character who wanted to have some meaning to their life, and their whole idea was doing like was finishing their high school short film. Like what would be the interesting like character aspects of that? And I kind of like workshopped it like, well, what is it, their movie? Like what if it was like a puppet show that they were passionate about? And it was almost kind of like a documentary idea, of someone so committed to something so ridiculous, but it was so important to them. Like what is the character, like what's the character interest in that person, And so it was those ideas kind of like smashed up together after a night of drinking, and produced the idea of like, okay, so what if our main character finds out that reality is a simulation? So that gives us an opportunity to have an end of the world scenario but skirting some of the typical cliches.
You don't have to deal with explosions or solar flares or
right, exactly. Like, like, are people still going to work? Like power outages, people like burning cars, things like that. And so you can kind of have kind of a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy ridiculousness to it, of like the voice saying, apologies for the inconvenience.
Perfect.
It's just perfect. Well, and the other thing, and you really, at least I can feel the 80s sensibility that you bring to this movie. Like there is a sort of sincerity that I feel when I'm watching John Hughes. You know what I mean? And the fact that it's about movies, I think I'm glad you didn't go with a puppet show. I think that would have been absurdist. But the fact that you went about movies is something that I think is more universally relatable, because I think we all have a little bit of that thing where we want to finish the thing we didn't finish when we were younger. right? It doesn't have to be movies. It probably wouldn't have been a puppet show, but there's something, right? And that I think makes it really touching that he's able to do this and to do it at not to do it better, not to Fableman it, but to do it the same as he did it in high school is chef's kiss. It's really great.
And it's also, by being a movie, it creates community. Like if it was writing a novel, like I've got to finish that novel. Oh, great. And then we're just watching him sit in a room by himself for the rest of the movie,
Right.
Snooze. But film, that's, filmmaking creates such community. And that's, I think, such an important part of that, of being, in the film community, making a film. You really kind of create this family of these people that you're working with day in and day out. And that's a valuable part of this story, because it's bringing people together who hadn't seen each other since then. It's helping him reconnect with his ex-wife. Neighbors that he hasn't really talked to a ton kind of come in and become part of the core thing. And that's what's nice about it, is in this time when everybody is about to have their lives switched off, essentially, they're able to find that connection with one another.
Yeah, it was one of those things that I got into it and you realize, oh, I'm kind of channeling my love for movies like Ed Wood or Bowfinger, or I when I started writing it, I didn't realize that I was writing a movie about movie making, which is almost kind of like its own genre,
Yeah, sure.
Where you've got the guy with the crazy idea, he brings in a lot of misfits, and then they kind of find their own family, I knew that I was making a movie about someone who was alone and isolated and was kind of creating a family of misfits, but I didn't know I was sliding right into that kind of specific genre until I was like halfway through it.
That's funny. That's funny. That to me is like the heart of the movie, and you didn't even know it.
Yeah. but I and the thing is that I love those kinds of movies. Like specifically, I think Ed Wood was influential on this one.
Talk about Tim Burton's Ed Wood. Or maybe also Ed Wood, the filmmaker, and so
a little less.
A little less. Okay, yeah. But right, it's the behind the scenes of this is the process. I know the wall moved. Oh, it's fine. No one's going to notice. It's like that passion that they have.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like, let's do this thing.
Yeah, I recurringly use like a joke, and I don't get any response to it, but I keep using it to where it's like an actor bumps into the wall and goes like, "Oh, should we do another take?" And it's like, I feel like in real life he'd have that same problem. Let's just move on. You guys would get it, but
that's awesome.
In real life, that's amazing.
So you got the movie made. I mean, you were still working independently, low budget. Are you able to say what sort of budget, or is that still kind of like?
It's definitely, I can't say the exact number, but it is definitely micro budget. It's all self-financed. And so, we did pay some people like $100 a day. And then some people still to kind of pull off the budget we had. A lot of people like myself deferred their salaries. But yeah, we don't have any investors other than people who were actually part of the production. So it's just a couple of us who were just putting in money as we were going.
Gotcha.
So it's much more budget-wise. It's much closer to Clerks, adjusted for inflation.
Gotcha. You talked about like the first time you went and made a movie, the challenges of going into it, not knowing all the things. Like how do you hustle? What do you do? Do you just submit to festivals? What's the process? What's changed between the late 90s and now when you were reaching out to festivals and just kind of like starting this whole thing? Because it's also, I mean, there's a lot more information out there, but it's also a lot more aggressive in the things that filmmakers need to do to kind of get their films found and into these things.
So it's kind of become a bit of an arms race and diminishing returns, to where I would say every decade there's been less people purchasing independent films. So the DVD market falling out, even kind of like the streaming bubble popping a bit. Like there was a time that people would gun to try to get a Netflix deal or an Amazon deal. And those are really super rare now because they're producing their own stuff. and they have their own kind of mandates. And then again, there was times where you can get on Amazon Prime, and as an independent, you could make money for the streams, and then they cut the revenue that you would get by like 1/10. And so there's been more films made. There's more access to film festivals and information, but there's even less buying of independent films. Now, the biggest obstacle is getting your movie seen from the noise. And so you've got to work more, and the chances of success are way, way lower. So it's not as bad as music, but it's not great for sure, you know?
And it's not really moving in the right direction.
No. Yeah, absolutely not.
Just talk us through the journey toward distribution, because I can't remember. There was a while, I don't know how long ago it was, you wrote and you said, hey, I'm in this thing. You can go buy the movie and watch it now, which felt like, was that part of a festival or that was like a specific deal?
You usually have, so when the movie's done, you're going to have a film festival run, and you have to be mindful about where you premiere, because some film festivals want a world premiere. Some film festivals want a regional premiere. Let's just say, for instance, if we had a Sundance caliber film, which no, we did not get into Sundance, but that's okay, because Sundance is different now than it was like 20 years ago.
Yeah, right.
And so we don't want to spoil our world premiere by playing, let's say, like a small local film festival, and then, oh, sorry, you've already had your world premiere. And so some film festivals require world premieres, some don't.
Yeah, it's a real game.
Yeah, it's a real game. And so, and then it's like, if I want to play at the Phoenix Film Festival and then also at some film festivals in Tucson, it's like, sorry, you've already had an Arizona premiere.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's tricky with LA. That's tricky with New York. That's tricky with Midwest and things like that. And so you have to understand, and not all film festivals require that. And so you have to kind of do a little research. But yeah, so usually for us, our film festival tour kind of lasted about a year. And it was totally different than I would have imagined. You know, I thought that, okay, this is kind of a nice, straight down the middle. A lot of people can enjoy it. It has a lot of genre love and that aspect, but I feel like it was kind of a little more mainstreamy. And really, we ended up getting much more embraced in the diehard genre community that also like comedy. So it wasn't a comedy film, it was a genre film. So we actually got into a lot of horror film festivals that programmed us as counter programming. Like, here's a little mint. You just saw people getting chainsawed.
Right.
Welcome to a palate cleanser.
And they loved it. Like when we would get into Chattanooga or Popcorn Frights or Film Quest, like the reviews would start rolling in on Letterboxd, and they were all about it. So that was awesome. Like, I never submitted it into a horror film festival, but I think we got into about 3 or 4 of them. They would reach out to us. I saw your film at Chattanooga.
Yeah.
So yeah, we played. I was only able to go out to a couple. Phoenix Film Festival was an amazing experience. But yeah, I was only able to go up to a couple. So now, ever since COVID, a lot of film festivals have a online portion as well. So we played at the Chattanooga Film Festival, but only in their online programming. We weren't playing there in person. So I was initially bummed by that, because I wanted to go to Chattanooga, because I heard that it was a really fun film festival. And so it was online. And so I was reaching out to people I knew. Hey, it's available online if you want to see it. You know, you can buy a ticket. And so I didn't get like the experience of going to the Chattanooga Film Festival and meeting other filmmakers, but that film festival was just a perfect fit for the movie, because we got so many reviews, and other different film festival programmers saw it there. And then kind of invited us to get into their film festivals. So yeah, it was ultimately really, really rewarding.
Nice.
But yeah, it's weird. A lot of these festivals are now doing an online portion of it, and I wouldn't jump at all of them. Or it's like, if we got into one that was in person and on live, maybe I wouldn't promote that we were also online, because I also needed, to a certain degree, to have a I needed some people to actually rent and buy the movie at some point.
Yes,
you know,
right,
and so
right.
maybe like the last couple of ones that were in person and online, I would not mention the online aspect to it,
Gotcha.
and just the in person. But yeah, eventually what we did is that we reached out, because we don't know the world of distribution. I reached out to a sales agent that helped kind of navigate us through that world. And we had been getting solicitations by random sales agents that I didn't feel great about. You know, it's like they would post the listings at a film festival, and on that day you would get like 2 emails from rando sales agents. And it's like, I don't know about these guys. And it's really tough because the world of micro budget feature filmmaking is not inherently profitable.
Yeah, right.
I compare it to amateur wrestling or minor league baseball, to where the system itself is meant for either you dip into it and you luck out, or you graduate to the next level. But there's just not enough money in the micro budget world to just make micro budgets. I'm sure some people do it. Again, I'm sure some people can make a career out of amateur wrestling, selling swag at the back of their,
Right.
in the trunk of their
Somebody's
car.
doing it. Yeah.
But you have to work so hard to do it.
Yeah.
You have to work so hard to make your money in micro budget filmmaking, because honestly, people don't watch a lot of micro budget films. And when I say micro budget, I'm talking about really 250,000 and under,
Gotcha.
and usually it's more like 100,000.
Right. Yeah. Real
and
small.
we didn't have that. And so if you don't have a name actor in it, if you're not doing a genre, like there's some genres that can succeed, especially if it's on a platform like Tubi or Freevee, that it's like there's no cost, you can just watch it, and it's stuff, and it's the obvious picks like stoner comedies or horror films and things like that, to where it's an easy buy-in, and if they don't like it, they can turn it off after 15 minutes. It's a lot tougher if you're trying to kind of make a quote normal movie that doesn't, not normal movie, because I certainly don't make normal movies, but if you're making kind of a multi-genre film.
What is the transition though? Because now did something happen that was fantastic that gets you now automatically into like Apple and the places where I can buy it?
No, so it's way more boring than it sounds.
This is great podcasting,
Yeah.
right?
So getting in, so we got a distributor, and then the process of delivering your movie to a distributor is arduous and tedious. It's basically they give you a list of 50 things they need, and each of those things could take like a week.
Right,
but luckily, if you kind of like anticipate some of these things, then you're not going to then you're going to be okay. It's like, we need a trailer, these different sizes, these different formats. We need posters, we need behind the scenes images, we need photos. But then that stuff is obvious, but then they need a whole bunch of legal stuff.
Yeah, clearance and stuff like that.
They need clearances, they need error and omission insurance, they need a copyright report, a title report. Basically, someone to look and make sure that you've got your copyright in order. But you're paying like a couple $100 for someone to just like look you up online and to do the due diligence.
It's a pain.
The important thing is that it's coming from a third party company saying it's okay.
Yeah.
And so the distribution company doesn't require that, so they feel good. To sell it to Amazon, to sell it to Apple, they need to provide that.
Right.
And so you also need to submit your movie to a quality control company for a couple $100. And again, they're just looking at your movie and saying, okay, no drop frames.
Yeah.
This is correct. This is right. Closed captioning, all these different things. And so it starts to add up, and you realize that it starts stacking up into a couple $1,000s just to turn in your movie.
Yeah.
Are you responsible for handling language, like translations for captions, or?
I only had to turn in, luckily, English. But there was a clause in there that we also had to turn in a French dubbed track, because the French don't actually like to read subtitles. apparently.
Imagine that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like a lot of these countries, we see their foreign films, and they're known for, quote, subtitled films. They only watch dubbed films.
Interesting.
But luckily, it's like, we don't need to submit that. It's like the ones I was worried about was having to submit a French dubbed track, and then also submitting a 5.1 surround sound system
mix. Yeah,
and it's like, I don't think that people are really like, I think micro budget films are not cranking up.
We're not cranking the speakers for it, right?
This wasn't mastered in Atmos.
Yeah,
we're not using it for the next demo disc, right?
And we're going to need it in 3D for the Vision Pro. So go ahead.
Exactly. So luckily they said, no, that's fine. You don't need to do that, because we had just mixed it in stereo.
Are they distributing it internationally at this time, or is it just domestic?
It's also on Amazon in the UK as well.
In the UK. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it may be somewhere else that I don't know, but I think it's just right now in the US and the UK.
So with all of this, and we'll certainly have the links for the movie in the show notes. Definitely people check it out, because it's a heartwarming, funny movie. Definitely worth watching. But with all of this, has it gotten you to a place where you have anybody like saying, "Hey, can we put some money behind you? Let's get another movie made," or what's happening now?
So not literally, like, no one has come out of the darkness and said, "Hey, let's talk about something." But my existing collaborators, they want to do something again, and that includes people that have put in a little bit of money, saying, what's the next project? Let's go again. So it's less of a door opening up, and it's more kind of an evolution of what we were already doing, of kind of like going up the steps, a couple steps at a time. So I also teach one class a semester at the film department at Glendale Community College. And I tell my students that the people who you really are going to change your life in terms of networking are the people on your level. It's not going to be someone who kind of reaches down from the clouds and offers you an opportunity. It's going to be, you're going to be leveling up with your friends, and you're going to give each other your opportunities. Oh, I'm shooting this thing. Can you be on it? Like the main star in the film, we worked together. We first worked together in 2008. On a short film at Scottsdale Community College. Yeah, Adam Reaney.
Yeah.
And then there's a number of people who I went to Scottsdale Community College twice. I went in the 90s right after high school, and then I went back in 2007 after Billy the Blood Donor to kind of reignite the fire again.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's where I actually went back. I thought I was going to finish the degree. I did not. I've gone 5 years and haven't gotten my 2-year degree. I think I'm just missing like a communications 100 class. Like I got all the math, I got all the English out.
You got to have something to reach for.
And so,
right.
There's still a number of people from SCC that I still work with today. And that's kind of become our community,
Yeah. That's awesome.
But no one gives off that your local Nathan Fillion vibe like Adam Reaney.
It's true.
Yeah, he's got something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
awesome.
We got to transition to the movie, and I just have this question. You picked Hot Fuzz, which is amazing, but given the last movie ever made, I have to tell you, I'm surprised you didn't pick The World's End.
Yeah, well, that's a little too obvious, don't you think? No.
Is it too obvious?
No, it's funny. I really like The World's End, but I love Hot Fuzz for whatever reason.
Yeah,
and it's funny because have you ever had this with movies that, like, some of your favorite movies, you kind of didn't love it the first time you saw it?
Yeah,
like whether it was expectations or whatever, or you just weren't kind of.
We talk about that all the time.
Yeah. You just weren't kind of prepared for the oblique entrance into it. Like I felt like that way with The Big Lebowski. It's like, maybe next time. Like it didn't work for me. And then
I'm still waiting for that one.
Oh,
Honestly.
really? Yeah. And
I'm
so
still
the next time, that was funny. Yeah, we could revisit. That was funner. And then it just kept getting better the more I saw it. It's not that I disliked Hot Fuzz, but I was like, no Shaun of the Dead. Like, I had really loved Shaun of the Dead. And some of the things I responded to, other than like the kinetic filmmaking, was the kind of like the story of Shaun. And with Hot Fuzz, it's very different. Hot Fuzz is a little more of a cartoon. It's much more of a buddy cop movie. The style is very similar, but it was a little less grounded, a little more hyperkinetic and ridiculous. But eventually, I ended up rewatching it and preferring that over Shaun of the Dead.
Interesting.
Asking you an important question: what's your perfect Sunday?
My perfect Sunday. Yeah.
No, but honestly, I think that a key part of this film, and this is why I think it's interesting that that you landed on this film, is that there is such an element of this film that is pulling from so many of the buddy cop movie tropes, of just action movie tropes. It's grabbing all of that and playing with all of it in a very clever, funny way. But also, as Edgar Wright showed us in Shaun of the Dead, he's able to use it in a way that even if the characters and the story is a little cartoony and really silly, you still end up having a lot of genuine heart in it. And I think watching our two characters kind of go through the motions of all the buddy cop tropes, like we're checking everything off all the way through, but then smartly like playing with them and twisting them and doing something different with them and using it to kind of give us something that feels different. It's spoofing on all that stuff, but at the same time, it's really kind of an homage to all of the joy that we get in watching movies like Point Break. You know, when Danny shoots his gun up in the air at the end
So
because
good.
he can't shoot his dad. Like, you totally buy into it, and you can see like it's exactly that same struggle that Keanu Reeves had in Point Break, and it works so well. But so many of these movies are from the 80s, and like you're growing up in the 80s and drawing on all of that stuff. I can see your draw to it. It's very much the same for me. Like, my initial draw was Shaun of the Dead. I saw Hot Fuzz and I'm like, yeah, it was great, but I don't like it as much as Shaun of the Dead. But the more I watched Hot Fuzz, just the more I'm like, it's grown on me so much to the point where I probably have seen it the most of the trilogy at this point. So
Yeah.
Well, because Nick Frost plays the same character, Simon Pegg does not, right? Like, and that was the jarring thing for me, is do I buy Simon Pegg not as Sean, right? And because I love Sean so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think the thing I really respond to with this film is the genre bending, that it's able to go through these tones of being sincere and then being ridiculous. I mean, there's a scene where the entire building and everyone inside explodes, and it blows up so much that every brick is separated from the building. And then everyone is just lying around. Are you okay? Are you? And everyone survives that blast.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that is the most ridiculous thing in the whole movie. But then there's other moments that are genuine and tender, and you get kind of this bromance between our two characters, and you feel it. Like, so that kind of genre bending, but also like going from comedy to like cop movie, and them playing, and almost the characters knowing that they're in a genre and having fun with it, like bang, bang, bang. It's like, oh my God, we're living a movie.
Yeah,
and that kind of, that genre blending is really appealing to me. And then also the playfulness of not only the story, but just the filmmaking style. The storytelling is so playful. Like the scene where Simon Pegg is at early in the beginning, and he's talking to Janine, and he's got to go away, and it's like their official breakup moment, or they've already broken up, and he's basically just telling her, and it's secretly Cate Blanchett in a mask. You know, the playfulness of the writing and the storytelling is just so good, and I love it. Like, I love that type of storytelling.
Right, you like, to the point where she dramatically takes her glasses off, like she's revealing who she is, but she still has the face mask on, so you're still not getting anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a dramatic glasses removal. And I also love the bit in that scene where she's, it's not, I can't remember the two guys, but it's not Bob, it's Todd. Hello there. Just like
exactly. Does Bob look like a guy I would be into? And they're, of course, all totally covered up in their hazmat suits, their clean suits.
All of the genre bending sort of name checks that you guys have already revealed, no one said horror yet, and this has some gruesome killings that are wonderfully shocking, and of course has one of my very favorite deaths in movies, Death by Church.
Death by Church, yes.
Outstanding.
Which church? Well, I guess there's only one death by church. The other is just an impaling by church.
Yes, it's just an impaling by church, but that would be my second.
Yeah.
This really hurts. It is outstanding. And I think that's one of those things that Edgar Wright gets away with by making something that's really horrific, that makes people like my wife watch this movie with me and be shocked and shrink down into her seat. But it happens so fast that you kind of get over it and get back into the sincerity and the comedy and all the other things. Like that's part of the filmmaking, like, and the writing wizardry that they're able to pull this off.
Yeah.
Well, and I think part of it is like the seriousness of Nicholas Angel through the story. Like, he's our character. We're following him. It's a serious case of murder that's happening, but everybody else has this air of lightness. It's just accidents. Like, nobody takes anything seriously because nothing bad ever happens in this town. And that creates this air of lightness that allows, I think, for that comedy to blend so well with some of these pretty gruesome murders or accidents.
Really?
Or whatever's the other term that he said. It's an incident, a traffic incident, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, it's I think Edgar Wright on the commentary track said that it's cop versus serial killer. That's the kind of genre that they're in. Like, I mean, it is kind of going after the Lethal Weapon, Bad Boys to Point Break kind of buddy story, but it's really like cop versus serial killer, which is kind of like Dirty Harry and some of those other ones, of like the more like grindhousey kind of like revenge, like the cop has to go to the next step to stop this brutal killer.
Yeah, we're just a hair's breadth away from what's in the box, right? Like,
yeah, right. And then he's also throwing in, just because we're in the British countryside, there's definitely like a Wicker Man vibe by the fact that we have this. It ends up being like this criminal cult of city, like the city council, the people who want, like, their motivation for everything is just because they want their village to be perfect, and so they're willing to kill whoever is in their way to keep it from becoming that. And I think that's another twist that we have, is like these British country cult movies that is kind of its own thing as well, brought into this as the villain for the silliest of reasons.
Yeah. Another appeal of this movie is that it's just so crafted. It's so thought out in terms of the setup and payoffs and the casting. Like, you have a who's who of British actors here. It's like someone said, it's like they raided the like the British retirement home and said, everyone, you're going to work today, and and it's just so fantastic. And you also get this other layer of the British don't get to make these big kind of cop action adventure movies, and we're going to do it, but we're going to own it. It's going to be the Bobby. It's going to be the countryside. There's going to be a swan, and we're going to lean into the silliness of it, but the wish fulfillment of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've talked a lot about story and structure, but I'm curious, as somebody in working so intimately in the micro budget space, like, what inspires you about this movie from the production side, from camera, from like, what are you watching for?
Mainly in terms of writing and how everything is formed and constructed and layered and introduced. But in terms of production is just how well the camera is telling the story and the transitions. And again, just the inherent playfulness of each shot. Like, Edgar Wright doesn't shoot coverage. Like, each shot is its own thing, which must be exhausting to make. But each moment is its own thing, and it's telling its own thing even like the way that the close-ups are, and just how much fun and playfulness you can have with how you're doing a character entering into a shot, how you're doing like, a tilt up from another character, talking to them, like these inserts, like how much power and fun you can have with them is really the kind of thing.
And Edgar Wright, I think, is really smart with that anyway. Just like the way that he and Simon Pegg working with him on the script, but then knowing how to put scenes together in such smart ways and quick ways to give us all the information. Like I'm always impressed by the way that he cuts together the sequence of Nicholas moving from London to the country, and the train rides and the cab rides and the cell phone bar, just the cuts of watching the cell phone bars get smaller and smaller. That whole thing is, I don't know, like 15 seconds maybe. It's so fast, but we get everything we need to out of that in a journey out to the country.
They do the same thing with the reveal of all of the different hooded participants in the run at the end, right? So that's why every corner he comes around, there's another hooded person hiding behind some piece of set that is and they do that in like 7 seconds. They reveal the whole thing, which is fantastic. It made me think of the, like, you talk about the fun, but also the, like, sort of the complexity of the structure of having the run through the gardens when Angel does the jump over all the fences, and he gets to the last one, and clearly there was an acrobat hiding there waiting to jump off a trampoline to do that final flip. Like, that's a complex setup that is hysterical to lead up to the payoff of Nick Frost running through the fences directly, and so all of those kinds of like structural elements where you put people so that the jokes work, I think is this movie is just chock-a-block full of them.
So did you ever hear, like, for Mad Max, George Miller would always make sure that the action that was happening was in the center of the frame. So he could cut so fast, but your eyes were in the same zone, rather than like the Michael Bay, like, chaos cinema of like over here, over there, over here, over there. I saw like a YouTube film essay saying George Miller cuts even faster than Michael Bay. But because all the action is happening center frame, you're always looking where the things are going to be. And I started to kind of do that with a lot of the Edgar Wright stuff. And during most of the shootout, everything was dead center in terms of where your eyes were gravitating towards.
Well, it's a lot of planning in your framing when you're shooting, and also knowing how shots are going to cut with each other. I'm always impressed in the shot when Danny's dad, Jim Broadbent's character, Frank Butterman, he's doing the tour, and he has like a piece of paper or something. He crumples the paper up and he tosses it over his shoulder, and then in the shot, they're walking through a hallway, and Danny clearly is going to catch it, but he's behind him. But then as soon as Danny ideally would be catching it, we cut to another shot, and they're done with the tour, and it's Frank Butterman in the room clapping his hands together going, "So," in the exact spot where he would be catching that paper. And just like that movement of the paper and catching it, like it's like those sorts of cuts are so well thought out, and just like the structure of like the production, the actor, the performance, everything, and then the editing to get the timing so perfect. And that's a trick for sure, because it requires so much planning across who knows how many days apart those two shots were filmed. But just like planning all that, it's mind-boggling.
Absolutely. It's master level, like, editing and then shooting for the edit, like the match cuts and just the movement. I think that's one of the reasons it's like, there is just like, I can't unpack everything of how much work or how much thought came into this. There's a certain part that I aspire to make a movie like this, but also like, there's no way that I would make a movie like this. There's just so much.
Yeah.
Our pal Cinemetrics has Hot Fuzz. The overall is right around 2.1 to 2.4 seconds, depending on who submitted her average shot length, and Fury Road 2.6.
Wow.
To your point about George Miller, there are sequences, because they'll say on Cinemetrics Hot Fuzz, like the first 30 seconds or first 30 minutes or chase scene that drop as average shot length drops as low as 1.7. Even the Fury Road trailer is the only thing that drops into 1.4.
Wow.
Average shot length of 1.4. I think that's remarkable. I never made that connection, but you're absolutely, that's right on. This movie's crazy what they get away with.
Yeah, and you never really, unless you've had maybe like 2 or 3 beers, you're never nauseous or confused, Yeah, it just all makes sense, and it's so thought out.
As far as the performances, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost are our core characters here as, Nicholas Angel coming to the country to work. Nick Frost as Danny, the police constable who is not as bright but is really excited about somebody, like working with somebody who's seen action in the city, and Simon Pegg and Nick Frost obviously have kind of created kind of a buddy pairing that has lasted past this trilogy of films, past Edgar Wright's films. Like, they've certainly gone on to do a number of things together, and there are a lot of great cinematic couples that have kind of transcended certain films. What do you think of this as a couple, like a cinematic team, and what they bring to a film like this, but also just any film that they're in together?
As a double act, like, I love them. Like, I'm a fan of the TV show that they were in, Spaced. And then also like The World's End. Yeah, they're definitely one of my favorite cinematic team ups. And I think it's because the stories that they're in, they have that aspect that they are stories of some sort of heart, that they're growing older or they're dealing with some other issue, but it's always manifested in a fun metaphor. And then the stories that they tell are inherently very silly in a lot of ways. They're writing that line of grown-ups wearing. It's like I say with my lead actor Adam Reaney. It's like, I'm always making him a sad man in a sci-fi outfit, and writing that line of trying to make him human. And also doing something that is childlike in a lot of ways, being very much an adult, but yet trying to do something silly and playful.
Well, look at the sleight of hand that you get with Nick Frost in this movie. The fact that his story is not just being the doofus, but being the guy who individuates from his father, and being the guy who learns how to be an adult as a separate individual. And that is a vastly more mature story than this movie probably deserves.
Yeah. And he also gets to be an action hero too.
Yeah, he gets to be an action hero too. Right.
Going back to your point, like all the things that he commented on to Nicholas early in the film. Have you ever jumped through the air firing your guns?
Yeah.
Have you ever fired your gun in the air screaming, no, I've never done that. Like all of the things that he calls out, like then they get to do later in the film. And it's just fantastic.
And a big shout out to the rest of the police squad, the police service.
Oh my God.
I watched Olivia Colman and Rafe Spall and Patty Considine. Like, I watched them more attentively this time because I feel like I haven't paid enough attention to them over the years as I watched this movie. They're incredible. They're incredible.
Yeah.
At just subtlety of comedy. And every turn, they're just hysterical.
Yeah, you could never get them all. Everyone is like, the supporting cast has just gone on and gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Like it is just such a packed house of talent,
And Stephen Merchant, piss taker.
Oh yeah. One scene. Yeah, one scene.
One scene.
You've got Mark Freeman, Bill Nighy. Again, that is literally Cate Blanchett in a mask in the scene.
Well, and Peter Jackson is Father Christmas stabbing his hand.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
So yeah, he was able to really pull in all sorts of favors and just get all of these people to just pop in for brief bits. Steve Coogan is the police inspector too. It's like, it's so fun seeing. And we've already talked about like this amazing lineup of people like Billy Whitelaw, Edward Woodward,
oh my God,
Timothy Dalton,
Paul Freeman,
Paul Freeman, like people who are very famous British faces from the past and some of them, like Edward Woodward in Wicker Man, like who have come back to do film like this film that so perfectly taps into some of the past sort of projects that they've done.
Yeah. There's so much talent in this, and then they've only gotten bigger, and so rewatching it is a real treat.
Yeah, it's adorable. It's really it's a cute sort of performance now that so much water's under the bridge for them professionally.
What do you, where are you with Edgar Wright and his needle drops? There's quite a lot of great hits in the soundtrack, which I think it's a really fun one to listen to. But what do you think of all of these?
Well, I was just watching and going, oh my God, all the, like we hear like a couple of seconds of this song, a couple of seconds. That must have been so expensive.
Yeah.
I just think about the music budget. That's another thing. I don't know. He must not have any free time or have no hobbies. But yeah, he's super into music and super granular into all of that as well. That flies right over my head personally. But it's so well done.
Yeah. And I think, there's that level. And, you were talking about kind of like the generational groups of people coming up. And I think that there is something about filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino and Sofia Coppola and Edgar Wright, who have a sense of music almost as much as they do the film industry, right? They really have tapped into all of that too. And they're able to pull these tracks that's not something that I feel like I've heard in movies before, yet it ends up fitting so perfectly in kind of like this tour of this perfect little village. And I don't know, I love these filmmakers who really have a handle on grabbing songs for the soundtrack that just don't feel like the same song that I've heard a gazillion times because it worked in one movie a while back. They're coming up with something different.
Yeah, they're deep cuts, and most of that flies over my head, but it feels great. It feels like the perfect moment, like it was written for each of these, and it's a unique soundscape that doesn't feel like they're just kind of regurgitating some of the same tracks.
But like you said, I mean, what's so brilliant about it is that you don't have very long to appreciate it. It just you moves on to the next thing so fast. There'll be a super jarring match cut or something that'll take you away, and the music goes with the cut. And I find that, I mean, it's no Baby Driver in that regard, but it's there, and you definitely get I feel like all of the Edgar Wright sort of quintessential transitions play with the soundscape too. So you get those fantastic like walk by transitions and the music goes away too with the body. It's just it's amazing, just how precise it is for a movie that is as goofy as it is. It's really great.
And you get the sense like there were a couple of specific needle drops, like expensive ones in Shaun of the Dead, but not many because it was such a low budget film. And so you really get a sense like he is like busting out the catalog and really going for it for this time around.
Well, Shaun of the Dead, all the needle drops were that entire budget was spent on the records that they threw at the first zombie. Like that was like that was the appreciation of music because they couldn't afford to play it, so they were just talking about the albums as they threw them. I thought that was really brilliant.
Yeah, that was very funny. Yeah, I think it's mostly just like the Queen track that I can think of with Shaun of the Dead that was just so prominent. Yeah, which is
right.
Again,
that's it. That was a whole budget,
perfectly used.
Yep.
Perfectly used. What else about this film? Like it's grown for you as like one of your favorites. It's something that you just can't get enough of. What else about it allowed it to grow so much in its esteem for you over time?
I would say also just kind of like the Britishness of it, So I went to England last year, and I was so like, it was so hard for me. I was going to go to Wales where they shot Hot Fuzz. And it was so hard for me to cut that. Basically, I had to decide, am I going to Wales or am I going to London? It's like, oh, okay, sorry, Wales. Like it was, but just the idea of it being a unique world and a unique feeling. And again, the British countryside, I see plenty of like BBC murder mysteries in the British countryside, but not a lot of action comedies in the British countryside, So there is kind of like a destination aspect to this movie. There is a certain degree of travel to this movie, which is really fun and appealing. I did have when I went to the UK, I did have a blue cornetto and a red cornetto.
Okay.
You just need the green one now.
Greens are hard to find, apparently. But yeah, I don't think we've mentioned it. But yeah, the Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost movies are called the Cornetto Trilogy.
Yeah, right.
Which is basically like it's like a freezer.
It's like the
ice cream,
the drumstick, like the American drumstick.
They're a lot like that.
Flavored. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
What are the flavors? I've had all kinds of drumsticks, but what are the flavors? Raspberry, I assume.
I wonder what the green one is. That's the one with the World's End.
I'm assuming it's like a mint chocolate chip sort of thing.
Oh,
yeah,
that's smart.
yeah.
That would be it.
And I think blue is pretty normal. I think blue is like vanilla, maybe with some like caramel on it, and then red might be strawberry or something like that. That would be my guess.
This week's show is sponsored by Cornetto.
Right. I'm looking right now. They have a variety of flavors: strawberry, mint chocolate, nut, lemon, whippy, which is yogurt flavor with a chewy chocolate, Valentine's Day flavors, and Cornetto Soft, which is soft ice cream that comes in chocolate chip, cookie dough, royal strawberry, unicornetto,
Ooh.
dragon cornetto, vanilla chocolate, royal chocolate, and double chocolate. The Cornetto Soft is sold on the street by vendors and is made on the spot with an ice cream dispenser, but the other flavors are pre-made and factory packaged. They also have a flavor called Cornetto Enigma, which consists of cookie and cream, raspberry, and double chocolate flavors. Wow.
Gosh.
Yeah.
I think they overshot the mark.
They have just a few. That is amazing. We're getting close to the end here, but this is a film that is so incredibly full of tropes. It's just like part of the joy of it. Do you have any particular favorite tropes that they tap into that are from action movies, buddy cop movies, any of those sorts of things that you see it and it's just like, God, this is so enjoyable the way they're using this trope?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Oh, well, it's the gearing up montage at the end.
Oh, yeah.
He comes out with the horns of guns. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's my favorite.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's fantastic. I really love the, I guess, like the first scene of like bromance where they're like watching Bad Boys 2. They're kind of drunk where he's dropped his guard. Nicholas Angel's dropped his guard, and they're playing that kind of Lethal Weapon buddy comedy thing to where it's just teetering on almost romance, but you get the sense that these two guys who have been at odds with each other are now kind of loving each other. And they're even leaning into like that musical soundscape and the way it's shot. It's very Lethal Weapon or Tony Scott.
You know what's funny? That's really the setup to the punchline to that scene is later when Frost asks, "Did you really buy me a peace orchid?"
Yes, yeah.
It's been impounded.
And I also really love the moment where all the other members of the police station flip and become like on their side, and suddenly now everyone is busting each other's balls and loving each other too. It's like being a twat, okay? They suddenly have a brand new dynamic of that pivot of going from adversary to now I'm right on your side, and now we're best friends, and we're gonna like break each other's balls, and
even to the point of absurdity. He hucks the trash can at him at his head, and they just laugh it off.
Yeah, I love how they take that which happens, and they just dial it all the way up until the dial practically breaks off.
Practically sitcom. Yeah. That's perfect. So funny. For me, it's just like, it has to be when Danny shoots into the air. It's like that. It's so perfectly tied into like the emotional core of the scene and everything, but just then the way that like, it just makes me laugh so hard when he does that, because I'm like, there it is. And it's done so perfectly. So yeah.
Yeah. And another one, which is the big, overly dramatic like fight between the good guy and the villain, but in a model village. So they're like towering kaiju,
right?
And it's so overdone to where punching and punching, and then, I'm going to grab your fist, and now I'm going to crush your hand, and I'm going to stand up. And they're like, and then they reverse the punching, and it's just so, and then slow motion, and they fall back, and then they land on an actual like model house, and they're like,
right.
And just taking that whole like end villain fight so melodramatically is just wonderful.
It's perfect. Well, Nathan, it has been so fun chatting with you about this, about the last movie ever made, about your career. Thank you so much for joining us over here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has just been a delight.
Can you tell everybody where they should go to learn more about your movie and your projects and you?
Yeah, so the last movie ever made is now on Amazon and Apple TV in the States, and then on Amazon in the UK. Our production company, Squishy Studios. You can go to our website. You can find us online. We've got a lot of our short films and web series and things like that at squishystudios.com.
Can I watch the blood one? Can I watch Blood, the Billy and the blood donor?
Yes, you can. Forever Midnight and Billy the Blood Donor are both on our YouTube channel.
How did I miss that before the show? Nathan, I stand ashamed.
That's
all right.
Fantastic.
I live with shame.
Well, it has been so much fun chatting with you. Thank you again so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And for everybody else out there, we hope you like the show. And we certainly hope you like the movie like we do here on Movies We Like. Movies We Like is a part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network and the Next Reel family of film podcasts. The music is Chonk Clap by Out of Flux. Find the show at truestory.fm and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd at The Next Reel. Learn about becoming a member at thenextreel.com/membership. And if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, we always appreciate it if you drop one in there for us. See you next time. You know what I got the other day, Pete? Stephen King's latest. Want to borrow it?
Do you know who you're talking to?
What do you mean?
Andy, when's the last time I read a paper book? It's been decades. I would much rather use Kindle, or better yet, Audible.
What am I thinking? I don't read paper books anymore either. I'm an audiobook guy all the way. For those looking to listen to the books behind the films that we talk about here on Movies We Like, not to mention all the other podcasts in the Next Reel family, get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at thenextreel.com/audible.
There are so many great adaptations from Movies We Like available in audio form.
Early on, we covered Casino Royale with director Matthew Gratzner. You went through all of the 007 books on Audible, right?
I did indeed. What a series. We also covered Room with legendary Dee Wallace and Never Let Me Go with costume designer Alana Moorehead.
We chatted about Fat City with cinematographer Sam Levy and Silver Linings Playbook with the great composer Harry Gregson Williams.
101 Dalmatians and Bambi.
Apocalypse Now, There Will Be Blood, The Thin Red Line.
There's so many great adaptations with so many great guests, and you can get all these as audiobooks on Audible, along with thousands of other great reads.
Producing this podcast is a lot of fun, but it does take a lot of time. We have already dropped the dynamically inserted ads because they are so annoying and have no connection to our content.
Plus, they just jam those things in wherever they see fit.
We listened when you said you didn't like them. So now, we're directly appealing to you, our dear listener. Please consider an Audible subscription to help support Movies We Like and the Next Reel's family of podcasts.
I've been using Audible along with my family for decades now. I love it, and I've read hundreds of books through it. Couldn't be more pleased with their service, and I know you'll love it too. Head to thenextreel.com/audible and get your free trial. It really helps us out. And you have a world of over 200,000 audiobooks open to you.
So much great material available. Dive in with a free trial and get your first free audiobook at thenextreel.com/audible.
Start listening to amazing audiobooks of your favorite movie source material with your first free audiobook today. That's thenextreel.com/audible.